Hi, my name is Immaculata, and last year I got a Support and Connect grant from the Goethe-Institut Nigeria to put together a book titled Restful on how Nigerians are finding respite amidst our struggles today. I proposed to print the book in Lagos, Nigeria, and out of that desire came a side quest in partnership with the Goethe-Institut Nigeria's We Make Books initiative. On this side quest, the goal was to figure out how art books can be made in Lagos at good quality. I created a printing guide taking you step by step, and you can read it by scanning this QR code or the link in whatever description you found this video. Have you snapped it? Okay. But that's not what this video is about. This video is the story of my journey. You may have heard that Nigerians don't read books. I heard it a lot before this experience, and I, a Nigerian reader, have always argued against it. I would say no. Aren't 70% of Nigerians literate? But no, it does not mean at all. For example, when I went to get an ISBN from the National Library, one of the chief librarians texted me saying that she has never seen a book with several contributors and a chief editor. Printers used to look at my file and ask, so na brochure with this, Abby? Around this time of working on this project, I read Ernest Egunyemi's profile essay on a popular bookseller in Abeokuta. When Ernest invited him for an interview, the man asked, what do you mean by essay? And Ernest had to scan the guy's shop looking for an anthology to illustrate, but found none. So he improvised. It's like a report, but informal. I give these anecdotes to offer you a felt sense of one statistic I came across while working on this project. The average Nigerian reads less than one book a year, and 40% of Nigerians have never read a non-fiction book cover to cover after leaving school. When you understand this, it makes sense that our book production industry is the way it is in Nigeria. Abi is the supply that comes before the demand. Shasha. This is how my experience went. My first time in Somolu was in July 2024. I went with the artist Philip Fabiyero, who had kindly offered to show me around, as he had experience making prints of his artworks for exhibitions. We walked around, going into shops and asking questions. I used that trip to inform my body of the stress I was going to subject it to. November 2024, I was back in Lagos, and the Restful book project had entered its printing phase. This time on my way to Somolu, it turned out that my taxi driver was a printer as an agent / broker, and he had an office in Somolu Gongon. It was a long day to say the least. But at the end of the day, around 7 p.m., I got my 2 samples, ready to showcase in Soto Gallery at an event hosted by Goethe-Institut Nigeria that Saturday. I was nervous about some of the errors. There were threads sticking out, there were glue stains showing here and there. And little did I know that that was the best sample I was going to make in Nigeria on this entire journey. At the event, I fretted about the errors, but someone said something to me like, you could also just embrace the errors as markers of where the book is being printed. And it was a generous perspective that helped me breathe. So on New Year's Eve, I went back to Lagos, this time with a bit more funding, to spend a couple weeks researching in depth how the Somolu printing ecosystem works and what it takes to print a good quality art book in Lagos. Somolu felt like one big factory spread across 14 square kilometers that included an open-air food market, people's homes, other businesses. The days I went, the sun was loud, and the streets, tagged to different degrees, had the sounds of generators, printers churning, car horns, people calling out to each other across the street, wood folders hitting paper, then hitting wood tables as stacks of paper are folded by hand, the smell of fried fish, smell of stuffed gutters, kids running errands, and sinewy, sweaty men pushing big stacks of paper on wheelbarrows from loading buses to shops. Printing in Somolu is your book going through several shops for printing, for cutting, for laminating, for embossing, for binding, for sewing, for gluing, with each shop having its own schedule of orders before it is handed back to the person who runs the print shop that your publisher goes to. The business is print, not literature. When I went that New Year's Eve, I had called a friend who called a parent, Who called a friend? Who called a friend? And I found a fixer that I felt I could trust to navigate the space. Directed by this fixer and his network, I went from shop to shop, printing, cutting, and so on, to make a bunch of samples myself. And after building a relationship with him, we also agreed that I would bring the final printing job for Restful to him. So I went back home to Enugu to recover from Lagos, and encouraged by the possibilities I had seen in Somolu and motion, I worked with my layout designer, Shadow Radika, to improve the book's design, optimizing it for delight and accessibility. The better we made it, the sharper I held my breath for fear that all our investment was going to be a waste if things did not go right at printing. The next month, I went back to Lagos with dummy books in hand to give the final printing job to the fixer/printing broker who had helped me in January. Straight from the airport, I went to his shop and I found him and his family busier than they had been in the early days of the year. He asked if I could do the job myself since I now knew what it took, and for me to bring the books back to him when they were ready for binding. He said, how? I said, huh? I said, how? Where? Where do you want me to start? Something that I had planned, like, I'm giving this book to you, I'm giving this job to you. This was not the plan. So you remember the taxi driver from October? Stranded, I reached out to him and sent him the dummy book I had made with instructions. He told me, yeah, he gets it, I'm good, no worries. But this time around, what took him half a day back then in November took him 2 weeks in February. And it would have been longer if I hadn't gone to IG to ask my community if anyone who lives in Lagos was willing to call him or to look for him in person and pretend to be my angry boss. Less than 15 minutes after someone agreed, I got a call that my package was on its way to Enugu. Reader, the samples. By the time I saw the samples, I had no more tears left to cry. All this while, I couldn't help wondering if to my stakeholders, my contributors, my funders, my newsletter audience that was updating weekly, if I was being that story person to them in the same way that my printers had been to me. Like every time I would say, I'll have this by the end of this week, and then I wouldn't be able to have it for another 3 weeks. I saw myself in the middle of a domino effect, going round and coming back around, each person with different priorities and pressures, all of us navigating inefficient systems within larger inefficient systems. I later went to one premium printing company in Lagos, and after 3 weeks of texting them and calling them to get more than "we're coming, sir," just when I was about to pay for delivery, the person I was texting me said, "I just saw the book. I'm not pleased with some things there. So I've asked the team to remake it." Just know that time I'm making this video, I've still not gotten an update on what's happening in my book. And it's been 4 weeks. You know the way after seeing Shege in this Nigeria, whatever is left standing in front of you just earns a halo in your eyes, because you know just how difficult making anything, doing anything in this country is. Sometimes I find myself torn between thinking, what's the problem again? Is it that it doesn't look British? What happened to decolonizing your tastes? Now you're imposing foreign standards on yet another Nigerian industry that is doing its Nigerian best. On one hand, I'm thinking that, and on the other hand, I'm like, what kind of bare minimum is this that is tempting you? Anisha, so much has not gone as planned, and the gift in front of me now is an opportunity to share my experience and the muscle it has developed in me. Another opportunity in front of me is the chance to reconsider how I can get Nigerians to experience this book. We may not read books like that, but more than 78% of us listen. We listen to podcasts and we listen to radio. So I'm looking into that to see what's possible. In any case, I printed a handful of copies in the UK, and I'll be donating some of them to libraries and selling a small number just to gauge appetite and to see whether it's possible to print outside while keeping the cost okay for Nigerians. In summary, after God, fear Nigeria, but not fear as in run away and hide. Just due respect, negotiation, and resourcefulness. Shout out to all the bookmakers, book writers, publishers, sellers, book club organizers, readers, reviewers, librarians, and so on working in Nigeria. You all built a world that made me the bookish person that I am today. And knowing the odds this industry faces, I stand in greater awe of you. Because of you, I know that good books are still worth fighting for.